I think Peter said it really clearly that this is not something we do to people, it's about empowering people, and also when we do an expert meeting on the issue on TB, malaria, and HIV/AIDS, of course, it's also about talking with people and hearing from people who both living with the diseases and also who are out there doing the advocacy and fight against these diseases. So I'm very happy that we have two people. One of them is here in the room. The other one is going to be online. I'm going to start here in the room with Rhea Lobo, who's first of all a journalist, communication expert, and also you have personal experience on tuberculosis. You are part of both, you're board member of the Stop TB Partnership and part of the task force to develop a global plan to end TB by 2030. So very interesting work you're doing. I'm really happy you're here, and I would love if you could give us some minutes on first of all, your personal experience. I mean, both personal experience with tuberculosis, also how you're working with the advocacy and the fight. Also taking into consideration, of course, giving us some words on the current situation. What is the new challenges? What is going on now? Because as Peter Sands was saying, I mean, the development with COVID has been quite tough on many of these questions. So 4 or 5 minutes, if you could give us an introduction to that, and then we'll have some Q&As later as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rasmus. And in the spirit of what Karen said earlier, about it being partly in Danish and partly in English, I think I should give it a shot. Jeg hedder Rhea. Jeg kommer from Indien. Jeg taler dansk og engelsk sammen. Jeg bor i lejlighed på Østerbro. Are you impressed? So, dear members of Parliament, the reason I can speak like this is because of you. Because you have put policies in place in this country where someone like me can come in and integrate and live in a beautiful country like Denmark. Today I'm sitting here in front of you asking you to give me a fighting chance to just live against an extremely neglected disease where the odds are stacked up against me. I don't know how many of you know about tuberculosis, but currently we are using a 100-year-old vaccine to help prevent TB. The vaccine doesn't work, needless to say. I've gotten the vaccine, I still got TB. Unlike COVID-19, we don't have testing kits which we could use at home to test if we have TB. It's sputum-based tests. But no one has invested in this sort of research and R&D because TB primarily affects the developing world and nobody really cares about it. And the third thing I want to say is we still have extremely long treatments to take care of TB. These treatments are not just long, they're painful. The drugs that you take sometimes makes you feel like that's killing you and not the TB itself. I have a close friend of mine who lost her hearing because of taking a particular drug with TB. So it is misery in every step of the way. My own journey with tuberculosis started with an ache on my foot. Now, lots of people think that TB is just in your lungs, right? But TB can actually affect any part of your body. And in my case, the bacteria sat on a little bone on my foot. I went to the doctor. It felt like a sprain, you know. I went to the doctor, and the doctor did some scans, and he sat me down and he said, you know what? It looks like you have either TB, cancer, or it's just a regular bacterial infection. Okay, I did a surgery on my foot, a biopsy, and this was the first red flag. the doctor did something very peculiar. He took this tissue from my bone and he tore it in half. And he sent it to 2 different labs. I asked him why he was doing that. And he said, because if it's tuberculosis, it's really hard to diagnose. The first lab report came back, and it was great. It was negative for TB. It was negative for cancer. And it just said I had a regular bacterial infection. And I started taking regular antibiotics. Everyone was thrilled. 6 weeks into taking regular antibiotics, I woke up one morning and I realized, hey, I never saw that second lab report. I went back to the doctor. The doctor said, oh, it seems to be missing in the files. A duplicate report was issued. And that report said I had TB. Now, why is this so bad? Because I have taken the wrong medicines for 6 weeks, and I run the risk of getting drug resistant. You know, antimicrobial resistance? Yeah, TB is a huge part of that. Finally, I was on the right drugs. My lymph nodes on my neck started swelling. I wasn't feeling like I was getting better. I had a couple of surgeries. I went to dozens of doctors, and I didn't know what was going on. Finally, when I met this particular doctor, he looked at my reports and he said, what have you been doing all this while? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you've been taking the wrong dosage of medicines with respect to your body weight. And what does that mean? That means I run the risk of getting drug resistant yet again. I miraculously survived this ordeal. I took TB medicines for 1 year, 8 months, and I was one of the lucky ones. I've got to be honest with you. I am a person of privilege. When I had TB, I had access to the members of Parliament in India if I wanted to. And in spite of that access, I struggled to get cured. I dread to think what vulnerable populations, people from poorer sections of society have to go through in order to get cured. Like I said, I come from a privileged background. But yet, when I first found out I had TB, near and dear ones told me, don't tell anyone you've had TB, okay? Shh. And I said, why? And they said, in people's minds, TB never really goes away because it's a centuries-old disease. You know, even though it's a completely preventable, completely curable disease. And someone came and told me, no one's going to marry you if they know that you have had TB. I know what you guys are thinking. Who wouldn't want to marry me, right? But this is the societal stigma of TB. Okay, and it is there. It is breaking families. It is breaking marriages, and it's breaking people. I'd like to say one last thing in conclusion, that this is not just my story. I have a network of people where we support people who have TB. This is everybody's story. People are constantly getting misdiagnosed. People are changing dozens of doctors in search for the right care. People are just left to die from this preventable and curable disease. Countless people are just left to die. I'm looking at you, Denmark. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you in hope that you'll do what counts. Because believe me, the one thing the Global Fund does extremely right is that it makes a difference for these people on the ground.